Hi there, it's me, Scott again, and I'm going to be doing another book reading. I haven't done one in a while. Last one I did was for It, and so this one's going to be another Stephen King book. It's going to be Misery, and one of my favorites as well. And one thing I like about it is that for the vast majority of the book, you only have the two characters in it. Annie and Paul Sheldon, and so it's almost like a cat and mouse thing, except this time the cat's got the mouse and is just tormenting it the entire time she's got it. And so good book, and let's start. I'm going to be reading from the very beginning. Chapter 1. Number 1 fan. These sounds, even in the haze. Chapter 2. But sometimes the sounds, like the pain, faded, and then there was only the haze. He remembered darkness. Starlit darkness had become before the haze. Did that mean he was making progress? Let there be light, even though the hazy variety, and the light was good, and so on and so on? Had those sounds existed in the darkness? He didn't know the answer to any of these questions. Did it make sense to ask them? He didn't know the answer to that one either. The pain was somewhere below the sounds. The pain was east of the sun and south of his ears. That was all he did know. For some length of time that seemed very long. And so it was, since the pain and the stormy haze were the only two things that really existed. Those sounds were the only outer reality. He had no idea who he was or where he was, and cared to know neither. He wished he was dead, but through the pain-soaked haze that filled his mind like a summer storm cloud, he did not know he wished it. As time passed, he became aware that there are two periods of non-pain, and that these had a cyclic quality. And for the first time since, emerging from the total blackness which had prologued the haze, he had a thought which existed, apart from whatever his current situation was. This thought was of a broken-off piling, which had jutted from the sand at Revere Beach. His mother and father had taken him to Revere Beach often when he was a kid, and he had always insisted that they spread their blanket where he could keep an eye on that piling, which looked to him like the single jutting fang of a buried monster. He liked to sit and watch the water come up until it covered the piling, and hours later, after sandwiches and potato salad had been eaten, after the last few drops of Kool-Aid had been coaxed from his father's big thermos, just before his mother said it was time to pack up and start home, the top of the rotted piling would begin to show again. Just a peak and flash between the incoming waves at first, then more and more. By the time their trash was stashed in the big drum with "Keep your beach clean" stenciled on the side, Polly's beach toys picked up. That's my name, Polly. I'm Polly, and tonight Ma'll put Johnson's baby oil on my sunburn, he thought, inside the Thunderhead, where he now lived. And the blanket folded again. The pilings had almost wholly reappeared, its blackish slime smooth sides surrounded by sudsy scuds of foam. It was the tide, his father had tried to explain, but he had always known it was the piling. The tide came and went. The piling stayed. It was just that sometimes you couldn't see it. Without the piling, there was no tide. This memory circled and circled, and maddening like a sluggish fly. He groped for whatever it might mean, but for a long time the sounds interrupted. Fan. Read everything. Number 1. Sometimes the sound stopped. Sometimes he stopped. His first really clear memory of this now, the now outside the storm haze, was of stopping, of being suddenly aware that he just couldn't pull another breath. And that was all right. That was good. That was in fact just peachy keen. He could take a certain level of pain, but enough was enough, and he was glad to be getting out of the game. Then there was a mouth clamped over his, a mouth which was unmistakably a woman's mouth, in spite of its hard, spitless lips, and the wind from this woman's mouth blew into his own mouth and down his throat, puffing his lungs, and when the lips were pulled back, he smelled his warder for the first time, smelled her on the outrush of the breath she had forced into him, the way a man might force a part of himself into an unwilling woman. a dreadful mixed stench of vanilla cookies and chocolate ice cream and chicken gravy and peanut butter fudge. He heard a voice screaming, "Breathe, goddammit! Breathe, Paul!" The lips clamped down again. The breath blew down his throat again. Blew down it like the dank suck of wind which follows a fast subway train, pulling sheets of newspaper and candy wrappers after it. And the lips were withdrawn, and he thought, for God's sakes, don't let any of it out through your nose. But he couldn't help it, and oh, that stink, that fucking stink. "Breathe, goddamn you!" the unseen voice shrieked. And he thought, "I will, anything, please, just don't do that anymore, don't infect me anymore." And he tried, but before he could really get started, her lips were clamped over his again, lips as dry and dead as strips of salted leather, and she raped him again, full of her air.